Today on Sugar Spun Run, I'll be showing you how to make cheese crackers. Hey Sugar Spun Bakers, Sam here, and today I am so excited to be sharing another carefully tested, well-researched, and perfected recipe. This is one of my son's favorites. I actually developed this recipe because I was so tired of constantly buying him cheese crackers from the store. He was always asking for them, so I feel so much better about giving him ones that I have made from scratch at home. Now today's recipe is going to be made in a food processor. It makes really quick work of this, so you are going to want to grab yours, and you are also going to need to grab an 8-ounce block of extra sharp cheddar cheese. You do want to use a block of cheese rather than pre-shredded cheese, but you are going to need to shred this block. Now my food processor has a shred option on it, so I am just going to use that. It'll make really quick work of it. Once that is nicely shredded, I'm going to remove that shred blade and just replace it with my regular blade. I don't know what this is called. And I'm going to add 1 1/3 cups of all-purpose flour, just 1½ teaspoons of granulated sugar for a little flavor, and 1/4 teaspoon of kosher salt, 1/4 teaspoon of paprika, which adds a nice flavor and adds a little bit of color. Pop that lid back on there, and we're going to process everything together for 15 seconds. You want that cheese to be really well worked into the flour and the other ingredients. Let me just give you a peek at what this looks like so you have an idea of how yours should look at home. Next, you are going to need 1/2 cup of cold unsalted butter. I'm just going to chop this into about 8 pieces. Just scatter those pieces evenly over the top of my cheese and flour mixture. Now let's drop our lid back on, and we are going to process everything. I like to pulse it until that butter is nicely cut into the mixture. Now, I don't want to go too far with this. I do not want to overwork the butter, otherwise the dough can get really sticky. I just want to do it until the butter is mostly cut up. Let me show you how it looks. Mixture looks pretty pebbly. You can see I have some chunks of butter still in here. This looks perfect. I don't want to process it any further than this. What I do want to add though is some ice water. We are going to be adding some ice water to this mixture, and that's what's going to finally help that dough to really cling together. I find I usually need 3 tablespoons of ice water, but I always start with 2 first. And then I just like to process things briefly. I just pulse it about 5 to 10 times. Take a look at how the dough looks, and then I like to add that last tablespoon. It is possible you may need even a pinch more or a drop more since it's water, but I have never needed to go over 3 tablespoons. All right, let's process this again, and we want to pulse everything until the dough starts to cling together, but you don't want it to be completely formed into a ball. All right, let's take a look because this is pretty much perfect. This dough looks great. It's still really crumbly, but you can see it's stickier, it's clinging together, and if I take some of the dough and press it between my fingers, you can see it clings together really well. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to take some plastic wrap. I'm going to divide this dough into 2 parts. Now the dough is really crumbly, so I'm just going to use that plastic wrap to help me work the dough together into kind of a ball shape. I want it all clinging together. Then I'm just going to use my hands to press it together. I don't want it to be really crumbly so it's cracking. I want it to be nice and cohesive. Cover it back with my plastic wrap and flatten it. And I want to try to make it into a square shape or a rectangular shape. That's going to make it a lot easier, and it'll make my dough a lot less wasteful. There'll be a lot less that I have to regroup and re-roll out when I go to roll it. We'll do the same with our other half of dough. All right, this dough does need to chill, so I'm going to drop it in the fridge where I like to let it sit for at least an hour. Once it's almost finished chilling, you'll want to preheat your oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit. So once your dough is finished chilling, you'll just want to transfer it to a lightly floured surface. I like to lightly dust the dough with a little bit of flour too. And I'm going to roll it out, trying to keep it as much of a square shape as possible or rectangle as possible. And I want to roll it until it's between 1/8 and 1/4 inch thick. Now you can use a sharp knife, a pizza wheel, or a pastry cutter to cut this dough. I like the nice ridged edges I get with a pastry wheel, so I'm going to use this to cut it into 1-inch squares. Now you do not have to be precise with this, you can totally eyeball it, but you guys make me nervous on camera, so I'm going to use a ruler to make sure I get as close to neat 1-inch squares as possible. When I make these off camera, things sometimes get a little bit messy. Now these scraps here on the side, I'm just gonna set them aside. I will regroup them and I'll re-roll them out to get more crackers out of those once I'm finished. All right, I'm going to transfer these to an ungreased baking sheet. And they don't need a lot of room, but I like to give them a little bit of space. So you don't want the crackers right on top of each other. There's not a lot of salt in these crackers, so we're going to add a little bit more on top. I'm just gonna sprinkle some additional, I'm using kosher salt, but sea salt would also be a good choice. I'll just scatter that over the top. Now this step is optional, but I like to take a wooden skewer, see that blunted edge there, and I'm just going to pierce a hole in the center of each cracker. If you don't have a wooden skewer, you can just use a toothpick, that would be fine. All right, let's take these over to our 375 Fahrenheit preheated oven where they're going to need to bake for about 15 to 18 minutes. If your oven bakes unevenly, you're going to want to rotate them halfway through and keep an eye on them because you may need a little bit less time or a little bit more depending on precisely how thick or thin you rolled them. All right, these look beautiful. All that's left to do is let them cool. And once they have, you should be able to easily remove them from the baking pan. If they're sticking a little bit, you can use a spatula, but I don't usually have that issue. And that is how you make my son's favorite homemade cheese crackers. If you guys try this one out, please let me know what you think. It's definitely not just for kids. I love these myself, so does my husband. I think you're going to love them too. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.